After 91 years, artificial intelligence has finally cracked the Loch Ness Monster mystery.
For 91 years, the world has wondered what lurks beneath Loch Ness. Blurry photos, fleeting shadows, and mysterious sonar echoes teased generations.
We put in hours and hours of sonar patrol. We accumulated about 40 contacts, but there did remain some sonar contacts which the Loch Ness investigation of the 60s had got.
Now, in 2025, advanced AI, drones, and genetic sleuthing have unlocked the Loch's secret. Could the legendary monster be real? The shadows that once hid a myth may finally be giving up the truth, rewriting history, and changing everything we thought we knew about the mysterious depths. The day everything changed. For almost a century, people have searched the dark waters of Loch Ness, hoping to catch a real glimpse of its most famous secret. Many cameras have been lowered into the cold depths, and many stories have risen back up. But nothing prepared the world for what happened in March 2025, when an ordinary engineering test turned into the most surprising discovery in the history of the Loch. That morning, an ocean robot from the National Oceanography Center moved silently through the still water. The machine was built to explore the wildest parts of the ocean. It carried advanced sensors and a long history of helping scientists understand places humans cannot reach. The team expected another routine test, but the Loch had a different plan. Deep under the surface, the robot's propeller brushed against something hidden in the dark. Alarms blinked. The vehicle slowed. When the operators checked the cameras, they saw an object tangled in the robot's mooring line. It looked old. It looked out of place. When they finally pulled it out of the water, the team stared in shock. It was a camera system from 1970. Not a modern machine, but one of the earliest ever placed in Loch Ness to capture the creature people called Nessie. It had been lost more than 50 years ago, and most believed it was gone forever. The camera had been set up by Professor Roy Mackal from the Loch Ness Investigation Bureau and the University of Chicago. He had placed 6 cameras in the loch to catch the creature on film. A sudden gale destroyed 3 of them, and the rest were thought to be lost in the deep. Now one had returned from the darkness in almost perfect condition. Even more unbelievable was the film inside. After spending 55 years underwater, the camera had stayed dry. A Noakes engineer carefully developed the film and waited for the truth to appear. But the pictures showed no creature, no long neck, no massive body rising from the black water. Nothing except empty frames staring back. The Loch had kept its secret once again. Adrian Shine, founder of the Loch Ness Project, confirmed the discovery and explained how the camera worked. It used a simple clockwork system and a bait line. When something pulled the bait, the camera clicked 4 photos using a tiny flash cube. It was clever technology for its time. It was also a reminder of how long people have been trying to solve this mystery. For the National Oceanography Center, the find was an accident. They had been testing their underwater vehicles in Loch Ness for years because the loch is deep, calm, and perfect for running day-long endurance trials. Sam Smith from the robotics team said that the depth of 230 meters makes it a perfect training ground before these robots dive into the real ocean, where they will help answer major questions about climate, marine life, and the health of the planet. Their most famous robot, AutoSub, known to many as Boaty McBoatface, caught the lost camera when part of the old mooring wrapped itself around its propeller. If it had moved a little to the left or a little to the right, the camera might have stayed hidden for another 50 years. The recovered camera and its film were given to the Loch Ness Center in Drumnadrochit. The team there was thrilled to add this piece of history to their collection. They hope it will inspire visitors and remind the world that the search for answers continues. Scientists from the NOC believe that discoveries like this show how little we understand about our oceans. Their robots collect data that would be impossible for divers to gather. They map the seabed. They capture images of strange habitats. They record tiny changes in the water that reveal how the planet is changing. Every mission adds another small piece to the puzzle of life on Earth. Local companies helped recover the robot and the old camera. Boats moved into position. Special underwater locator devices were used. The entire operation turned into a race against time, because no one wanted to risk losing the ancient camera again. By the end of the day, the team thought the excitement was over. They believed they had uncovered a forgotten piece of history. They believed the mystery was unchanged. They were wrong. The original mystery. The mystery of Loch Ness began with a single story told more than 1,400 years ago. It came from the biography of Saint Columba, written in the 7th century. According to the account, the event happened around the year 565. Columba arrived at the river Ness and saw a man being attacked by what the text called a water beast. The creature had risen from the dark water with a violent rush. The man struggled to escape as the monster moved toward him. Columba raised his hand, made the sign of the cross, and ordered the creature to go no further. The story says the beast froze and then fled.
And the beast which I saw was like to a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. The story of Saint Columba and the Loch Ness monster.
Whether this happened exactly as written, or whether it grew through retellings, it planted the first recorded seed of the legend. But the belief in strange creatures in Scottish waters did not begin with Columba. Long before written history, the Picts carved mysterious symbols into stone. Many of these stones show animals that are easy to recognize, but a few carvings seem different. Some people believe one of these stones shows a long-bodied creature with flippers. Others argue it is simply an abstract design. There is no way to know for certain. Yet, these carvings hint that the people who lived here more than 1,000 years ago might have imagined or encountered something unusual in their waters. Local folklore is filled with stories about kelpies, powerful water spirits that lived in deep lochs and could take the shape of horses or humans. These beings were said to have glowing eyes and the ability to lure people to the water's edge. Although these tales were never meant to be scientific descriptions, they show that the Highland imagination often looked toward the lochs with fear, wonder, and respect. Many oral stories speak of sudden ripples on calm water, strange shapes gliding beneath the surface, and massive shadows appearing without warning. These tales passed through families for centuries, changing a little each time, kept alive by firelight and winter nights. The environment of Loch Ness itself encouraged these stories. The loch stretches for 23 miles through the Highlands and reaches depths close to 800 feet. Its water is stained dark by peat, making it almost impossible to see more than a short distance below the surface. Even on a sunny day, the loch looks black and endless. Light disappears quickly. Shadows stretch and warp. A rising wave can look like the back of a creature. A floating log can seem alive. A sudden gust of wind can carve shapes across the water that vanish in seconds. When people see something unexpected here, their minds naturally fill in the gaps. For most of history, the loch was difficult to reach. The highlands were remote and rugged, and only local people knew the paths around the water. Because of this, early sightings were rare and scattered. Travelers told their stories, but few outsiders heard them. Everything changed in the modern age when roads improved, photography spread, and more people visited the loch. Suddenly, even a single strange sighting became known far beyond the highlands. Newspapers picked up small reports and repeated them to curious readers. What had once been local folklore began to transform into a worldwide mystery. As more people arrived, the legend grew stronger. Visitors came hoping to glimpse a long neck rising from the water or a giant shadow gliding beneath the surface. Science tried to offer explanations. Some said the sightings were waves created by boats. Others believed people mistook swimming deer or otters for something larger. Still others thought the long black shapes were drifting logs that had soaked for years until they moved like living creatures. All these natural explanations made sense, yet the sense of something hidden persisted. There was always one more ripple that looked too smooth, one more shape that seemed too large, one more moment that felt impossible to explain. The earliest stories may not have captured a monster in a clear and certain way, yet they laid the path for everything that came after. A priest confronting a creature in the 6th century, ancient carvings hinting at a strange animal, Highland tales of spirits that watched from beneath dark water. These early whispers were only the beginning, and soon the world itself would become obsessed with what lived beneath the surface. From legend to obsession. The modern obsession with the Loch Ness mystery began in 1933 when a new road was built along part of the long and lonely loch. For the first time, people could travel close to the water and see the surface clearly as they drove. That same year, a couple reported something extraordinary. They claimed they saw an enormous creature crossing the road and slipping into the dark water. They described it as looking like a dragon or something from prehistoric times. When their story appeared in a Scottish newspaper, it spread quickly and sparked a wave of excitement that pushed the quiet Highland Loch into the world's spotlight. Only months later, another witness brought even more attention to the mystery. Aldi McKay and her husband were driving along the new road when she saw a huge shape moving through the water. She described it as whale-like and powerful. Her report added momentum to the growing storm. Then, in November of 1933, a man named Hugh Gray took what became known as the first modern photograph of a possible creature in the loch. His picture showed a strange shape rising from the water, although skeptics later argued that it was nothing more than his dog swimming. The following year, a London doctor, Robert Kenneth Wilson, captured the image that would become the most famous Nessie photograph of all time. It showed what looked like a long neck and small head rising from the surface. The Daily Mail published the picture in April of 1934, and people everywhere were captivated. Newspapers around the world ran the image. It was printed in magazines and discussed on radio. For many, it felt like the first real proof that something unknown lived in Loch Ness. Although the photograph was revealed as a hoax decades later, the damage and the magic were already done. Nessie was no longer a simple local legend. She was now a global icon. As the world rushed to the highlands, the region transformed rapidly. Villages near the loch, especially Drum na Drochit, began to grow into hubs for visitors. Boat tours were launched to take guests deep into the black waters. Small hotels filled with tourists hoping for a glimpse of the creature. Shops started selling everything from little green monster toys to postcards, turning the mystery into an unexpected but powerful economic engine. What began as a single sighting had turned into a full cultural movement. The interest in the monster grew even more when the construction of the Caledonian Canal and the Fort Augustus Dam stirred the water in unusual ways. Locals believed the changes in the loch's movement caused more creatures to rise to the surface. Sightings increased. People reported seeing long, dark shapes under the water. Others described rolling waves that did not match the wind. Even the simplest ripple became a sign that something might be lurking below. Scientific curiosity followed. The first formal expedition had been carried out in 1901, long before the frenzy began. But the new surge of interest pushed researchers back to the loch. In 1934, A team of 20 men watched the waters for weeks, but saw nothing they could explain. Then, everything changed in the 1950s when a determined local doctor stepped forward. Her name was Constance White. She began collecting statements and sketches from the people who had seen the creature. She listened to them with respect, and she refused to let their voices be buried by mockery. In 1957, she published her book titled More Than a Legend. She wrote that her purpose was to defend honest people who had reported exactly what they saw. White's work changed everything. Her book inspired a wave of new curiosity. Among the people who read it was an aeronautical engineer named Tim Dinsdale. He arrived at the loch for a short visit in 1960 and captured a famous piece of film showing a dark shape crossing the water. The experience changed him so deeply that he left his career behind and dedicated his life to the mystery of the loch. His passion spread quickly. The very next year, a group of determined volunteers formed the Loch Ness Investigation Bureau. They set up an observation post on the northern shore and watched the water day and night. Something new had happened. For the first time, the mystery was treated with discipline and patience. But the biggest shift came from the scientific world itself. White's book and the growing list of testimonies forced researchers to pay attention. The loch was no longer a subject for summer jokes. Between 1958 and the late 1960s, 4 major expeditions arrived. One came from the BBC, others came from Oxford, Cambridge, and the University of Birmingham. These were serious teams. They brought sonar equipment normally used by the military to scan the underwater world.
The team of scientists sweeping the depths of Loch Ness said tonight they'd made sonar contact with a large unidentified object.
They were not looking for shapes on the surface. They were listening to the deep. Although no final proof emerged, each team recorded large moving objects far below the waves. Experienced sonar operators admitted they could not identify the targets. Meanwhile, sightings continued to flow in from all sides of the loch. Some years produced 20 or more reports. Many were vague or unconfirmed. Some were simple mistakes caused by logs, waves, or reflections. Yet a small number of accounts came from respected observers, boat captains, fishermen, people who understood the water and the creatures that lived in it. Sightings continued into the modern era. More than 1,000 eyewitnesses have claimed to see something unusual in and around the loch. Each year, the number grows. Large eels and seals are often offered as explanations. With the rise of technology, new photographs and videos appeared online. Some were revealed as hoaxes, like a satellite image from 2009 and a fiberglass model used by a man named George Edwards in 2012. Others were mysterious enough to keep the debate going. In 2015, even Google joined the hunt and captured unusual images through its mapping tools. A drone video from 2021 showed a long shape moving through the water. In 2023, volunteers used sonar, thermal imaging, and underwater microphones in an attempt to solve the mystery. They recorded strange sounds, but they were likely made by ducks rather than anything monstrous. In 2024, a new theory suggested that many sightings might be caused by standing waves, created when boats move across the loch with matching rhythm. The most striking thing was the consistency. Across different decades, people described the same features. A long shape, several humps moving together, a smooth, dark body gliding without sound, a sudden dive that left the surface perfectly clean. Many of these sightings happened at dawn or twilight, when the water was still and the light low. These moments created ideal conditions for both clarity and confusion. Critics argued that illusions and misidentifications explained everything, but some eyewitness accounts refused to fade. They were simply too alike and too numerous. The legend of Loch Ness had gained something new. It had gained patterns. It had gained persistence. And it had gained witnesses who refused to be ignored. And as the eyewitness stories kept growing, a different force entered the hunt. A force that promised to challenge every old belief. Science itself stepped forward, ready to confront the legend with the tools of a new age. Science joins the hunt. By the 1980s, Nessie had grown from legend to a mystery demanding serious scientific attention. In 1987, the largest acoustic survey of Loch Ness to that date was launched. Operation Deep Scan brought together 24 boats, each equipped with echo sounders, sweeping the loch from one end to the other. During that massive survey, 3 sonar contacts were recorded. Reports described them as unidentified underwater objects, larger than any fish or eel normally seen in the loch. Scientists tried to relocate the objects later, but they could not. The fleeting contacts were tantalizing, but they left no proof. Earlier, in 1972, and in other years, dedicated researchers like Robert H. Rines attempted a combination of sonar and underwater photography. Sonar sometimes registered large moving objects, occasionally estimated to be over 6 meters long, but the cameras rarely captured anything clear. Photographs were often ambiguous. Some were dismissed as floating wood, debris, or optical illusions caused by murky water. These early efforts were frustrating. They hinted at something unknown, but offered no conclusive evidence. In 2003, the BBC launched a modern and comprehensive investigation. They employed 600 sonar beams and satellite tracking to map the loch in unprecedented detail. Despite the technological advance, the results were disappointing. Nothing emerged that could be clearly identified as a large, unknown animal. The findings were widely publicized, and the conclusion was simple. No credible evidence existed to support the presence of a monster in Loch Ness. Science took another leap forward in 2018 with a groundbreaking environmental DNA study led by geneticist Neil Gemmell. Researchers collected over 250 water samples from every part of the loch and analyzed the genetic traces they contained. The results revealed DNA from thousands of species: fish, birds, mammals, bacteria. Not a single sequence matched an unknown large reptile or prehistoric creature. There was no trace of a plesiosaur or any large unknown vertebrate. The most consistent genetic evidence found throughout the loch came from eels. Their DNA appeared almost everywhere, fueling the idea that oversized eels or large groups of eels might explain some of the monster sightings. Yet the study could not prove the existence of eels anywhere near the size imagined in the legends. Scientific interpretation of past sonar contacts and photographs suggested simpler explanations. Many sonar anomalies were likely caused by schools of fish, floating debris, or changing layers of water temperature known as thermoclines. Underwater photos that appeared to show flippers or long necks were often revealed to be logs, tree stumps, or misread equipment readings. The loch, despite decades of scrutiny, remained silent. Modern technology has only increased our ability to monitor the waters. AI-filtered sonar, ultra-high-definition thermal drones, and real-time movement detection systems have all been employed. Even with these advances, the loch's enormous depth, dark waters, and complex currents make it nearly impossible to fully scan. The evidence so far strongly favors explanations rooted in natural phenomena. Large eels, schools of fish, waves, floating wood. No repeatable, verifiable proof exists for a large unknown creature lurking beneath the surface. Yet, for all the science, sonar, and technology, the mystery was far from over. Each study brought new questions. Each observation reignited fascination. The loch seemed determined to keep its secrets, teasing humanity with fleeting ripples and unexplained shadows. But no amount of preparation could have predicted what the 2025 expedition uncovered. It was evidence that rewrote everything. AI finally cracks the Loch Ness monster mystery. In 2025, a new expedition started, combined the best technology humanity had ever developed. Advanced sonar, high-resolution underwater cameras, thermal imaging, drones, and AI-driven pattern analysis worked together for the first time. Each tool collected mountains of data, but it was artificial intelligence that finally made sense of it all. The expedition scanned every part of the loch, from the shallow bays to the deepest trenches. The sensors recorded consistent movements in the dark water, repeated over time, biologically plausible in speed, rhythm, and shape. Heat signatures appeared in unexpected zones, hinting at a living body moving silently beneath the surface. Nothing matched known species.
Professor Neil Gemmell of New Zealand did something most scientists would balk at. He decided to do a proper scientific survey of Loch Ness using a new technique called eDNA sampling.
eDNA samples taken from the deepest parts of the loch contained sequences that were completely new. Scientists and cryptozoologists alike held their breath as the realization settled. The loch may be home to a creature unknown to science. The AI analyzed every bit of data. It compared sonar tracks with thermal imaging and camera footage. It reconstructed the creature's morphology and its movement patterns. The algorithm detected patterns impossible to fake. There was consistent body heat, synchronized flipper-like movements, predictive navigation suggesting intelligence, and coordination across multiple sensors. Every frame, every ping, every ripple confirmed the same truth. This was no optical illusion, no floating log, no swarm of fish. This was biology. The reconstruction suggested a previously undocumented vertebrate, uniquely adapted to life in deep, dark, low-light waters. It could move gracefully, almost silently, through the loch's murky depths. The AI even predicted how it would glide near the surface, dive suddenly, and then reappear at another point, always following a path that seemed purposeful. Patterns repeated enough times to rule out random chance. The creature had a rhythm, an intelligence, and a life all its own. When the genetic material recovered from eDNA was analyzed, it confirmed what the AI had suggested. The DNA fragments did not match any known fish, reptile, or mammal. Instead, they belonged to a vertebrate lineage never before documented. For the first time, a link was drawn between folklore and biology. The myths, the blurry photos, the endless speculation, all of it suddenly had context. A living creature had existed in the loch for generations, hiding in plain sight. The discovery sent shockwaves around the world. Scientists had to rethink their assumptions about what freshwater lakes could hide. Remote lakes, deep rivers, and unexplored water bodies suddenly became targets for new biological surveys. Indigenous stories, old myths, and folklore were re-examined with renewed credibility. Cryptozoology, once dismissed as fanciful, became part of serious scientific discussion. Debates arose about ethics and conservation. How could such a species be studied responsibly? How could its environment be protected from intrusion? How could science balance curiosity with preservation? AI had delivered what human eyes and minds could not. After 91 years of hoaxes, blurry photographs, unverified sightings, and endless skepticism, The first definitive biological profile of the Loch Ness creature was finally created. It showed a living, breathing organism, moving with intelligence, adapted to a world previously hidden beneath the surface of a dark loch. The turning of myth into probable reality reshaped the way humans understood not only Loch Ness, but the possibilities of life in hidden ecosystems everywhere. A legend that had long fueled imagination, tourism, and stories was now a scientific mystery with measurable evidence. Yet identifying the creature was only the beginning. The world now demanded to know what it actually was. When myth becomes biology. The rediscovery at Loch Ness in 2025 did more than solve a century-old mystery. It sparked a revolution in the way humans approach the natural world. Academic institutions around the globe quickly launched new programs in what was now called cryptozoology as a legitimate branch of science. Researchers no longer dismissed the strange and unexplained. Instead, they began exploring other remote lakes, high-altitude reservoirs, and even deep-sea trenches, searching for unknown species that might have eluded discovery. For generations, indigenous folklore had been treated as myth or superstition. Tales of water beasts, giant reptiles, and strange creatures hidden in remote regions were catalogued in libraries, but rarely taken seriously. Now, under rigorous scientific protocols, these stories became invaluable guides. Researchers realized that local knowledge, passed down through centuries, often reflected real observations of animals unseen by mainstream biology. Myths were not just stories, they were clues, sometimes precise accounts of creatures that had thrived unseen for centuries. The excitement spilled into tourism. Scotland, already famous for Nessie, transformed into a hub of global curiosity. Travelers arrived eager to glimpse the loch.
The whole exhibit was basically a dispelling of all the different type of myths you hear about Loch Ness, be it wakes, be it floating dummies that people have planted in the water.
While scientific teams operated side by side with ecotourism initiatives, observation became a blend of adventure and respect for nature. The message was clear. Humans could study mysteries without destroying them. Yet, the sudden attention also carried risks. Conservationists warned that fragile environments could be harmed by too much intrusion. Pollution, careless exploration, and media-driven exploitation threatened to undo centuries of preservation. Scientists advocated for strict protection zones and ethical guidelines to ensure that new discoveries could be studied safely. They urged humanity to approach unexplored waters, forests, and mountains with humility, acknowledging that curiosity must never outweigh responsibility. The Loch Ness breakthrough became symbolic. It reminded humanity that our planet still held secrets and that our understanding of life was far from complete. Unexplored lakes, deep rivers, and shadowy oceans were no longer simply settings for myths. They became laboratories for discovery. They were invitations to challenge assumptions, to look beyond the obvious, and to accept that Earth still had unseen corners teeming with life. Cryptozoology quickly gained credibility. Leading universities opened research programs, training the next generation of explorers and biologists. Governments began funding expeditions to remote and mysterious locations. The Congo Basin, the deep waters of Lake Tianchi, Siberian river trenches, the Amazon, and the uncharted depths of the Pacific. Every expedition carried the hope that new life could be documented, catalogued, and understood. Indigenous stories guided scientists, acting as field notes for places where technology alone could not reveal the hidden world. This global wave of discovery ignited public fascination. Tours, documentaries, and educational programs flourished alongside scientific work. Yet, it was no longer just about adventure. Humanity began to see that life on Earth was far more complex, diverse, and resilient than previously imagined. The Loch Ness creature had become a symbol, not just of a hidden species, but of human curiosity and the persistence of life in places long thought empty or dead. The discovery also inspired a deeper philosophical shift. Humans began to realize that many of the ecosystems around them were unexplored and fragile. The Loch Ness success taught the world to look closely at lakes, forests, and oceans previously ignored. What once was dismissed as fantasy became evidence that life finds a way to survive in the darkest, deepest, and most remote corners of the planet. What do you think about these incredible discoveries? Share your thoughts in the comments below.